3 days before my 70th birthday, my daughter slid full guardianship papers across the table. "Sign, Mom. You're not sharp enough to manage your $4 million. She smiled coldly, certain of victory. She didn't know I was the anonymous investor who bought her mortgage last week. I adjusted my glasses, picked up the pen, and set it down again. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. Paula, I said, I'm not signing anything today. Her smile tightened. She glanced at Greg, her husband, who sat at the other end of my kitchen table with his phone face down and his jaw set. The same table where I'd taught Paula to read when she was 5. Where we'd decorated Christmas cookies every December for 43 years. Where her father had sat the morning he died, drinking coffee from the blue mug that was still in my cabinet. Mom, we've been through this. Paula's voice had that careful patience people use with children and the elderly. You forget things. You left the stove on last month. You couldn't remember Jake's birthday. Jake's birthday is March 14th, I said. And I never left the stove on. You made that up. Greg finally spoke. Linda, this isn't about blame. We're trying to protect you. I looked at him. Greg Michaels, real estate developer, 46 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. He'd been pleasant enough when Paula brought him home 15 years ago. Charming, even. Successful. Paula had been so proud. Protect me from what exactly? From making poor financial decisions, Paula said. She pulled out a folder. Inside were printed bank statements, highlighted in yellow. You withdrew $18,000 in cash last month. You can't even explain where it went. I could explain it perfectly. I'd paid off Jake's spring tuition because Greg had refused to, telling my grandson that struggle builds character, but I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction yet. And you've been giving money to strangers, Greg added. The lawn service, the grocery store clerk, random people at church. Tipping isn't a sign of dementia, I said. Paula leaned forward. Mom, Dad left you a lot of money. We just want to make sure it lasts, that you're taken care of. My late husband, Tom Harrison, had been a quiet man. A civil engineer who'd worked for the state for 38 years. He'd also been brilliant with investments, though he'd never talked about it much. After he died 3 years ago, I'd discovered the full extent of what we had. $4, $2 million in various accounts, the house paid off, and a small trust that generated another $80,000 a year. I'd been managing it all for the past 3 years without a single mistake. Better than Tom had, actually, though I'd never tell anyone that. Numbers made sense to me. They always had. This isn't just us being worried, Paula said, pulling out another document. Aunt Carol agrees. My stomach tightened. Carol, my younger sister, 66 years old and still keeping score from childhood. Carol signed a statement, Greg said, sliding it across to me. She's noticed the same concerning behaviors, memory issues, confusion about dates, inappropriate spending. I picked up the paper. Carol's signature was at the bottom, right above a notary stamp. The text above it described a woman I didn't recognize. Someone who'd asked the same questions repeatedly. Someone who'd gotten lost driving to the grocery store she'd shopped at for 40 years. Someone who needed help. None of it was true. When did Carol tell you these things? I asked. Does it matter? Paula's voice had an edge now. Multiple people have noticed, Mom. Your doctor even mentioned it. Dr. Patterson said no such thing. Not to you, maybe, Greg said. But he spoke with Paula, confidentially. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice level. Get out of my house. Paula's eyes widened. Mom, now. Linda, be reasonable, Greg said, not moving. We drove 2 hours to have this conversation. The least you can do is hear us out. I said get out. They didn't move. Paula's face had gone pale, then red. She looked at Greg, then back at me. We're not leaving until you sign these papers, she said quietly. For your own good. The moment stretched out. I could hear the kitchen clock ticking. Tom's blue mug sat on the counter where I'd left it after my morning coffee. Through the window behind Paula's head, I could see my garden. The roses Tom had planted the year before he died were in full bloom. That's when I realized what this was really about. You're broke, I said. Greg's expression didn't change, but Paula flinched. That's ridiculous. she said. The yoga studio is failing. I saw the foreclosure notice when I drove past last week. And Greg, your development project on Route 35, the one you couldn't stop bragging about at Christmas, that fell through, didn't it? This isn't about us, Paula said, but her voice was too high. How much do you owe? I asked. Silence. How much, Paula? $340,000, Greg said finally. But we have a plan to recover. We just need time. And we can't focus on fixing our situation if we're constantly worried about you making irrational choices with Dad's money. Our money, I thought. Mine and Tom's, not theirs. So the plan is to take guardianship, liquidate my assets, and pay off your debts. That's not, Paula started. Get out of my house, I said again. Both of you. Now. This time Greg stood. He picked up the papers, folded them neatly, and tucked them into his jacket pocket. We'll be back, he said. With a court order if necessary. We have documentation from multiple sources. We have Carol's statement. We'll have you declared incompetent whether you cooperate or not. Paula was crying now, but they were angry tears. You're being selfish, she said. Just like always. Everything has to be your way. You've never thought about anyone but yourself. I said nothing. I just held the door open until they walked through it. After they left, I stood at the kitchen sink for a long time. My hands had stopped shaking. I washed Tom's blue mug, dried it, and put it back in the cabinet. Then I went to my study and pulled out the file I'd started 6 months ago. I'd known something was wrong. Not with me, with them. Paula had been asking too many questions about my finances, dropping by unexpectedly, going through my mail when she thought I wasn't looking. I'd started documenting everything. But there was one thing they definitely didn't know. Last Tuesday, I'd purchased Paula and Greg's mortgage from their bank, paid $284,000 for it through my LLC. The same LLC I'd set up 30 years ago when Tom and I started investing in rental properties. The same LLC Paula and Greg had no idea existed. Their mortgage payment was due in 3 weeks. I owned their house now. They just didn't know it yet. I sat down at Tom's old desk. His reading glasses were still in the drawer. I put them on, even though they weren't my prescription, and opened my laptop. There was work to do. The next morning, I woke at 5:30 like always, made coffee in Tom's blue mug, stood at the kitchen window and watched the sun come up over my garden. The roses needed deadheading. I'd get to that later. First, I had phone calls to make. I started with my lawyer, Richard Chen. I'd known him for 20 years. He'd handled Tom's estate after the funeral. He'd also helped me set up the LLC that now owned Paula and Greg's mortgage. Linda, he said when he picked up. I was about to call you. About what? I received a petition yesterday afternoon. Paula Harrison Michaels is seeking emergency guardianship. The hearing is scheduled for next Friday. My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. Emergency? She's claiming you're an immediate danger to yourself, that you've been displaying signs of severe cognitive decline. She has supporting statements from 3 people. Let me guess. Greg Michaels, Carol Harrison, and a doctor. How did you know? They tried to get me to sign papers yesterday. I refused. Richard was quiet for a moment. Linda, this is serious. If they can convince a judge you're incompetent, you'll lose control of everything. Your finances, your medical decisions, where you live, everything. What do I need to do? First, we need documentation proving your competency. I'm scheduling a full neurological evaluation with Dr. Sarah Kim at Dayton Medical. She's the best. Second, we need to respond to their petition with evidence of your sound judgment, bank statements, investment records, anything showing you've been managing your affairs successfully. I have all of that. Good. Bring everything to my office tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. And Linda, one more thing. What? Don't sign anything they give you. Don't agree to anything verbally. Don't let them into your house without a witness present. If they're willing to file for emergency guardianship, they're desperate. After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started going through my files. Bank statements going back 3 years, investment portfolios, tax returns, the deed to my house, Tom's life insurance policy, the LLC documents. Everything was in perfect order. every transaction documented, every decision backed by research and careful planning. I'd increased our portfolio by 18% since Tom died. I'd refinanced the house even though it was paid off, taking advantage of low interest rates to pull out $200,000 in cash that I'd invested in municipal bonds, generating 5% annually. I'd sold 2 rental properties at exactly the right time, just before the market softened. I'd moved money between accounts strategically to minimize taxes. Not bad for someone supposedly suffering from dementia. Then I opened my email. There were 3 new messages from Paula. I'd been ignoring them since yesterday, but now I needed to see what she was saying. The first one was sent at 11 p.m. the night before. Mom, I'm sorry about how things went today, but you have to understand we're doing this because we love you. Please reconsider signing the papers. It would be so much easier if you cooperated. We don't want this to get ugly. Love, Paula. The second one came at 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about Dad and how disappointed he would be if he knew you were being so stubborn about this. He always said family comes first. He would want you to let us help you. P. The third arrived at 7 a.m. Greg talked to his lawyer this morning. We're moving forward with the court petition. I wish you hadn't forced us to do this. P. I closed the laptop and walked into Tom's study. I hadn't changed anything in here since he died. His books were still on the shelves. His reading chair still sat by the window. His desk calendar was still open to May 2021, the month he'd gotten his diagnosis, pancreatic cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to death. He'd spent those months putting everything in order, making sure I'd be taken care of. We'd gone through every account, every investment, every asset. He'd walked me through his system, even though I'd been the one actually managing most of it for years. He just liked feeling like he was in control. They think I'm weak, I said to the empty room. They think because you're gone, I'm helpless. I opened his desk drawer. Inside was a folder labeled, For Linda, Important. I'd looked through it once after he died, but it had just been copies of our estate documents. Now I pulled it out again and went through it page by page. That's when I found it. Tucked between 2 insurance policies, a handwritten note on Tom's stationery. Linda, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're dealing with something difficult. Probably involving Paula. I need you to know something I never told you. 6 years ago, Paula came to me and asked to borrow $50,000. She said it was for the yoga studio. I gave it to her. Then she came back a year later and asked for another $30,000. I gave her that too. Then another $20,000 the year after. I never told you because I didn't want you to worry. But I need you to know that Paula has a pattern. She sees money as the solution to every problem. She doesn't understand sacrifice or planning or patience. I tried to teach her, but I failed. Don't let her take advantage of you the way she did me. You're stronger than she thinks. Stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I'm sorry I didn't say that more when I was alive. Tom. My hands were shaking again. Tom had given Paula $100,000 over 3 years and never mentioned it. While I was clipping coupons and buying store-brand coffee. While I was wearing the same winter coat for 8 years. While I was telling myself we needed to be careful with money because we didn't know how long Tom's pension would last. He'd given our daughter $100,000 and she'd burned through it. I pulled out my phone and called Carol. She answered on the 3rd ring. Linda, she said. Her voice was cool. I heard Paula and Greg came to see you yesterday. Did you really sign that statement? Silence. Carol, I'm asking you a direct question. Did you tell them I was having memory problems? You have been forgetful lately. Name one time. Last month. At Mom's grave. You couldn't remember what year she died. She died in 2003. March 17th. I know exactly when she died. What I said was I couldn't remember whether it was 20 or 21 years ago. Because I was doing the math in my head and got confused for a second. That's not dementia, Carol. That's normal aging. You also forgot my birthday last year. No, I didn't. I sent you a card. You never acknowledged it. Another silence. Carol, why are you helping them do this to me? Maybe because you got everything, she said, and her voice was suddenly sharp. Mom and Dad left you the house. Tom had the good job and the big pension. You've been comfortable your whole life while I've had to struggle. Maybe it's time for you to share what you have instead of hoarding it like a dragon sitting on gold. I closed my eyes. There it was, 40 years of resentment in 3 sentences. Mom and Dad left me the house because I was the one taking care of them at the end. You were in Florida. You didn't even come back for Dad's last 2 months. I couldn't afford to take time off work. You were on a cruise when he died. That's not fair, Linda. You always do this. You always make me the villain. Well, maybe this time you'll finally understand what it feels like to have people questioning whether you deserve what you have. She hung up. I sat in Tom's study for a long time after that. The morning light moved across the floor. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Then I opened my laptop again and did something I'd been avoiding. I logged into the mortgage servicing portal for Paula and Greg's loan. As the owner of their note, I could see everything. Payment history, late notices, communications. They'd missed 2 payments in the last 6 months. Both times they'd caught up at the last minute, but there were penalty fees. The most recent payment had bounced. The bank had issued a notice of default 3 weeks ago. I clicked through to the property tax records. They were behind on those too. $8,400 in arrears. Then I checked the business records for Paula's yoga studio. There were 3 outstanding judgments against it. Unpaid vendors totaling $23,000. Greg's development company was even worse. He'd defaulted on a construction loan for $2 million. There was a lawsuit from his business partners. Another lawsuit from subcontractors who hadn't been paid. They weren't just broke. They were drowning. And they thought my $4 million was going to save them. I closed the laptop and went to my bedroom, pulled a small notebook from my nightstand drawer. It was where I'd been keeping notes for the past 6 months. Every time Paula had asked about my finances. Every time Greg had casually mentioned how much houses were worth in my neighborhood. Every time Carol had made a comment about how I didn't need such a big house for just one person, I'd documented 23 separate incidents. I'd written down dates, times, exact words. I hadn't known exactly what I was preparing for, but I'd known something was coming. Now I knew what. I picked up my phone and texted Jake, my grandson, Paula's son, the only one in that family who'd ever looked at me like I was a person instead of a bank account. Can you come by today? Need to talk to you about something important. He responded within 2 minutes. On my way. Be there in an hour. I went to the kitchen and started making cookies. Chocolate chip. Jake's favorite. The ones I'd been making for him since he was 3 years old. The recipe was written in my mother's handwriting on a card that was splattered with 50 years of butter stains. While the first batch was in the oven, I looked out at my garden. The roses really did need deadheading, but they could wait. First, I needed to talk to Jake. I needed to know whether Paula had gotten to him too, because if she had, if she'd turned my grandson against me, then I was truly alone. And if I was truly alone, then I had nothing left to lose. Jake arrived exactly when he said he would. That was one thing about my grandson. He kept his word. He stood in my doorway wearing jeans and a college sweatshirt, his dark hair messy like he'd just rolled out of bed. 19 years old and already taller than his grandfather had been. He had Tom's eyes, kind, observant. "Grandma," he said, and hugged me without hesitation. I held on maybe a second too long. When I let go, I saw him looking at me carefully, checking, making sure I was okay. "Come in, I made cookies." His face brightened. "Chocolate chip? Is there any other kind?" We sat at the kitchen table. I poured him milk in Tom's blue mug without thinking about it. Jake took 3 cookies and ate the first one in 2 bites. "So," he said, "Mom called me this morning, told me not to come if you asked me to." My stomach tightened. "And you came anyway?" "Yeah, because when my grandma asks to see me, I show up. And because Mom sounded weird, like she was trying too hard to sound casual." He took another cookie. "What's going on?" I'd rehearsed this conversation in my head, planned what I'd say, how I'd say it. But now, looking at Jake, I realized I couldn't manipulate him the way Paula and Greg had been trying to manipulate me. He deserved the truth. "Your mother and Greg are trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. They filed for emergency guardianship. The hearing is next Friday." Jake stopped mid-bite. "What?" "They claim I have dementia, that I'm not capable of managing my own affairs. They have statements from Greg, from your Aunt Carol, allegedly from my doctor. They want control of my finances. That's insane. You're fine. You're sharper than most people half your age. He set down his cookie. Why would they do that? They're broke, Jake. They owe over $300,000. They think if they control my money, they can pay off their debts. His face went pale, then red. Mom told me the studio was doing great. She said they were expanding. The studio has 3 judgments against it for unpaid vendors. They're behind on their mortgage, behind on property taxes. Greg's development company is being sued by his partners. Jake stood up and walked to the window. He stood there for a long time, his back to me. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. She asked me to lie. My heart stopped. What? 3 weeks ago, she came to my apartment, said she was worried about you, said you'd been forgetting things, getting confused. She wanted me to sign a statement saying I'd witnessed it. He turned around. I told her I hadn't witnessed anything because it wasn't true. She got upset, said I was being disloyal. That family has to stick together. What did you do? I told her to leave. She tried to give me money, $2,000 cash, said it was for expenses, but I knew what it really was. She was trying to buy a statement from me. His hands were clenched into fists. I told her I didn't want her money and she needed to leave. She started crying, said I was just like you, stubborn and selfish and ungrateful for everything she'd done for me. I stood up and went to him, put my hand on his arm. I'm sorry she put you in that position. Don't apologize for her. He looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Grandma, what are you going to do? Fight them. I have a lawyer. I'm getting a full neurological evaluation to prove I'm competent. I have 3 years of financial records showing I've managed everything perfectly. Do you want me to testify? Would you? Obviously. I'll tell them exactly what Mom tried to do. I'll tell them about the money she tried to give me. I'll tell them you're the most capable person I know. I squeezed his arm. Thank you. We sat back down at the table. Jake ate another cookie, but he wasn't really tasting it. I could see his mind working. There's something else you need to know, he said finally. Dad, Greg, he's not a good person, Grandma. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't want to cause problems. Tell me now. He's done this before. Not exactly like this, but similar. When I was 16, my friend's grandmother died. Mrs. Patterson. She lived alone, no kids except a nephew in California who never visited. Greg heard about it somehow. He started volunteering to help her with things. Yard work, grocery shopping, small stuff at first. Then he convinced her to invest in one of his development projects. She gave him $80,000. The project never happened. She died 6 months later, and the nephew couldn't find any record of where the money went. I felt cold. Did anyone report it? The nephew tried, but Mrs. Patterson had signed papers saying it was a gift. Greg had documentation. There was nothing anyone could do. How do you know all this? Because Greg bragged about it. Not in those exact words, but he told Mom it was proof that he knew how to spot opportunities. That old people with money were easy targets if you approached them right. Made them feel cared for. Made them feel like you were the only one who understood them. I thought about the past year. Greg offering to help with my taxes. Greg suggesting I talk to his financial advisor friend. Greg mentioning casually that large homes were hard to maintain at my age, that downsizing might make sense. He'd been grooming me, testing my defenses, looking for weaknesses. Why didn't you tell me before? Jake looked down at his hands. Because it's my mom, you know? And I kept thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe Greg had changed. He looked up. But he hasn't. And now he's doing it to you. After Jake left, I went to my garden. It was past noon and the sun was hot. I should have been inside, out of the heat. That's what everyone expected from a 70-year-old woman. Instead, I knelt in the dirt by Tom's rose bushes and started deadheading the spent blooms, one by one, cutting them back to the first 5 leaflet set, making room for new growth. Tom had planted these the summer before his diagnosis. Pink peace roses, my favorite. He'd spent weeks preparing the bed, amending the soil, checking drainage, making sure they had the right exposure. He'd wanted them to last long after he was gone. I'd kept them alive for 3 years, pruned them every winter, fed them, watched for disease. These roses were healthier now than when he'd planted them. That's what Paula and Greg and Carol didn't understand. They thought because Tom was gone, I was diminished, weakened. They saw an elderly widow living alone and assumed she was vulnerable. They didn't know that for 40 years, I'd been the one managing everything. Tom had his pension and his investments, but I was the one who balanced the checkbook. I was the one who found ways to save. I was the one who turned his careful planning into actual growth. They didn't know that I'd put myself through night school at 35 to learn accounting, that I'd worked part-time for 10 years doing bookkeeping for small businesses, that I'd studied tax law and investment strategy and retirement planning not because I had to, but because I wanted to understand. They saw a woman who made cookies and kept a garden. They didn't see the spreadsheets, the research, the careful documentation of every decision. I worked in the garden for 3 hours. By the time I finished, my knees ached and my hands were dirty, but every dead bloom was gone. The bushes looked clean, ready. Back inside, I washed my hands and made a sandwich I didn't eat. Then I went to my study and pulled out my laptop again. I had a week before the hearing. Richard Chen would handle the legal response, but I needed to prepare my own defense. I needed to understand exactly what I was facing. I started with Greg, searched his name plus his company name, found the lawsuits Jake had mentioned, found newspaper articles about failed projects, found 3 different LLCs that had filed for bankruptcy in the last 10 years. Then I found something else. An article from 8 years ago in a small Pennsylvania newspaper, a lawsuit filed by an elderly man named Robert Kowalski. He claimed Greg Michaels had defrauded him of $125,000 in an investment scheme. The case had been settled out of court, terms undisclosed. I kept searching. Found 2 more similar cases, one in Kentucky, one in Indiana, both involving elderly victims, both settled quietly. Greg wasn't just desperate, he was experienced. I printed everything, 43 pages. Then I started a new document, a timeline. Every interaction I'd had with Paula and Greg over the past 2 years, every time they'd asked about my finances, every suggestion they'd made, every casual comment about my house or my health or my age. The pattern was clear once I laid it out. They'd been working on this for months, maybe longer, each step calculated, each conversation building toward this moment. I worked until after midnight. When I finally closed my laptop, my neck was stiff and my eyes burned. But I had what I needed. A complete picture of who I was dealing with. The next morning, I drove to Richard Chen's office, brought my timeline, my financial records, the articles about Greg's past, everything organized in labeled folders. Richard's secretary showed me into his office. He stood up when I entered, gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Linda, thank you for coming. How are you holding up?" "I'm fine. I have everything you asked for." We spent an hour going through it all. Richard made notes, asked questions. When we finished, he sat back in his chair. "This is good. Very good. The documentation of your financial management is excellent. The neurological evaluation is scheduled for Thursday morning. But Linda, I need to ask you something." "What?" "The mortgage you purchased, Paula and Greg's mortgage. When were you planning to tell me about that?" My stomach tightened. "How did you know?" "I'm your lawyer. It's my job to know. The LLC is in your name. When I pulled records on their property as part of our defense preparation, I saw the recent transfer. Is that a problem?" "It could be. If they find out before the hearing, they'll claim it's proof you're making irrational financial decisions, that you're acting out of spite rather than sound judgment. It was a sound investment. I paid below market value for a performing asset. It's also your daughter's house, and the payment is due in 2 weeks. What are you planning to do when they can't pay?" I looked at him steadily. What I should have done years ago. Let them face the consequences of their choices. Richard was quiet for a moment. "Linda, I need you to understand something. If you foreclose on their house, if you follow through on that, it will destroy your relationship with your daughter, probably permanently. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Tom's note, about the $100,000 Paula had taken from him, about her trying to buy false testimony from Jake, about Greg's pattern of targeting elderly victims, about Carol's 40 years of jealousy finally finding an outlet. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. The neurological evaluation took 4 hours. Dr. Sarah Kim was thorough. Memory tests, cognitive assessments, problem-solving exercises. She asked me to remember lists of words, draw clocks, explain proverbs, count backward from 100 by sevens. I passed everything. Mrs. Harrison, she said when we finished, your cognitive function is excellent, better than average for your age group. There's no evidence of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any other neurological impairment. Can you put that in writing? I'll have a full report to your attorney by tomorrow morning. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in days. One piece of ammunition removed from Paula's arsenal. When I pulled into my driveway, there was a car I didn't recognize parked on the street, a silver BMW. As I got out, a woman emerged from the driver's side. Mid-40s, expensive suit, briefcase in hand. Mrs. Harrison, I'm Jennifer Wade. I'm an attorney representing your daughter, Paula Michaels. I locked my car door. I have nothing to say to you. I understand you're upset, but I think we can resolve this matter without going to court. My client is willing to make certain concessions if you'll agree to a voluntary conservatorship arrangement. No, Mrs. Harrison, please, just hear me out. We could structure this so you maintain control over day-to-day decisions. Paula would only step in for major financial transactions. It would protect you and give you peace of mind. I walked toward my front door. She followed. Your daughter is very worried about you. She loves you. She just wants to make sure you're safe. I turned to face her. My daughter wants access to my money. She's drowning in debt and she thinks I'm her life raft. Tell her the answer is no. Tell her if she wants guardianship, she can face me in court and explain to a judge why she tried to bribe my grandson into lying about my mental state. Jennifer Wade's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or concern. I don't know what you're referring to. Then ask your client about the $2,000 in cash she tried to give Jake 3 weeks ago. Ask her what she wanted in exchange. I went inside and closed the door. Through the window, I watched Jennifer Wade stand on my porch for another minute before walking back to her car. My hands were shaking. I made tea I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table with Tom's blue mug in front of me. They were escalating, sending lawyers to my house, trying to negotiate. That meant they were worried. That meant Richard's response to their petition had been effective. Good. My phone rang. Richard Chen. Linda, I have Dr. Kim's preliminary findings. They're excellent. I'm filing them with the court this afternoon along with your financial records and the timeline you prepared. We're in a strong position. Paula sent a lawyer to my house an hour ago. Tried to get me to agree to a voluntary conservatorship. Richard was quiet for a moment. That's interesting. It suggests they know their case is weak. They're looking for a settlement. I'm not settling. I didn't think you would be. There's something else. I did some digging into Greg Michaels' business history. Those cases you found in Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Indiana. There's a pattern. He targets elderly widows, gains their trust, convinces them to invest in development projects that never materialize. He's been investigated twice by state attorneys general but never charged. Why not? The victims settled. He paid them back partial amounts in exchange for confidentiality agreements and no criminal referrals. He's good at staying just inside the legal lines. Until now. Linda, I want to be clear about something. If we present this information in court, if we show that Greg has a history of exploiting elderly people, it will destroy Paula's case. But it will also destroy any possibility of reconciliation with your daughter. She'll see it as a betrayal. I thought about the cookies I'd made for Jake, about the garden I'd maintained for 3 years, about Tom's note hidden in his desk drawer. She betrayed me first, I said. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and logged into the mortgage servicing portal. Paula and Greg's payment was due in 10 days. The automatic payment system showed insufficient funds. Again, I disabled the automatic payment option. Then I drafted a formal notice of default. Gave them 15 days to bring the account current, including all late fees and penalties. Total amount due, $8,847. I saved the document, but didn't send it yet. Timing mattered. That evening, Jake called. Grandma, Mom came by my apartment today. She was crying, begging me to talk to you. She said you're being unreasonable, that you're going to ruin the family. What did you tell her? I told her she ruined the family when she decided to steal from you. She said she's not stealing, that she just wants to protect you. I told her I'm testifying at the hearing. He paused. She said if I do that, she'll never speak to me again. My heart hurt for him. Jake, I don't want to put you in this position. If you don't want to testify, I understand. Are you kidding? Of course I'm testifying. Someone needs to tell the truth. I'm just warning you that Mom is losing it. She's desperate. I don't know what she might do. After we hung up, I sat in Tom's study for a long time. The room was dark except for the desk lamp. Outside, I could hear crickets, the normal sounds of a May evening. I pulled out Tom's note again, read it 3 more times. Don't let her take advantage of you the way she did me. I folded the note and put it back in the drawer. Then I opened my laptop and sent the notice of default. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing at 6:30. Paula. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 6:45, again at 7. At 7:15, someone started pounding on my front door. I looked through the peephole. Greg. His face was red, his hair disheveled. He was holding papers in one hand. Linda, open this door right now. I didn't move. I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Open the goddamn door. I pulled out my phone and started recording video through the peephole. You can't do this, Greg shouted. You can't foreclose on our house. That's our home. Paula grew up in this neighborhood. This is where Jake went to school. You can't just take it away from us. I kept recording. This is proof, he said, waving the papers. Proof that you're not mentally competent. No rational person would do this to their own family. The judge is going to see this for what it is. A vindictive old woman trying to punish her daughter for caring about her. He kicked the door, not hard enough to damage it, but hard enough to make his point. We know about your little investigation, he continued. We know you hired some lawyer to dig into my past. You think you're going to embarrass me in court? You think those old cases matter? Those people were compensated. Everything was settled legally. You have nothing. Another kick. You're making a mistake, Linda. A huge mistake. If you withdraw that foreclosure notice today, we can forget this ever happened. We can all move forward like a family. But if you don't, if you insist on going to court, I will destroy you. I will make sure every person in that courtroom sees you for the bitter, selfish woman you really are. He stood there for another 30 seconds. Then he walked back to his truck and drove away. I saved the video and sent it to Richard Chen with a text. Evidence of harassment. This was at 7:15 this morning. He called me 5 minutes later. Linda, you need to file for a restraining order. Today. Will that help our case? It will show a pattern of intimidation and financial abuse. It will also keep them away from your house. I'm filing the petition this morning. You'll have a temporary order by this afternoon. Good. I spent the rest of the morning in my garden. The roses needed feeding. I mixed the fertilizer exactly as Tom had taught me. Equal parts nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Worked it into the soil around each plant. Watered deeply. The physical work helped. My hands in the dirt, the sun on my back, the smell of roses and earth. This was real. This was solid. This was something Paula and Greg couldn't touch. At noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Harrison? This is Detective Mark Sullivan with the Dayton Police Department. I'm calling about a complaint filed by Gregory Michaels. He claims you've been making threats against him and his family. My stomach dropped. That's not true. Sir, I have a video of Mr. Michaels threatening me on my front porch this morning. He kicked my door. He said he would destroy me if I didn't withdraw a legal foreclosure notice. I can send you the video. Silence on the other end. Mrs. Harrison, can you send that video to this number? And can you tell me more about this foreclosure situation? I explained everything. The guardianship petition, the debts, the mortgage I'd purchased, Greg's history of targeting elderly victims. I spoke clearly and calmly, laying out facts without emotion. Ma'am, I think you should come down to the station and file a formal complaint. What you're describing sounds like attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person. That's a felony in Ohio. I'll be there this afternoon. After I hung up, I sat on my porch steps. The roses Tom had planted were in full bloom now, pink and perfect and strong. Paula called again at 1. This time I answered. "Mom." Her voice was thick with tears. "Please, please don't do this. Greg is sorry about this morning. He was upset. He didn't mean any of it. We'll pay the mortgage. We'll figure something out. Just please give us time. You have 15 days. That's what the notice says. We can't come up with almost $9,000 in 15 days. You know we can't. That's why you sent the notice. You're trying to force us out of our home. I'm enforcing the terms of a legal contract. You're my mother." Her voice broke. "You're supposed to love me. You're supposed to help me when I'm in trouble, not push me over the edge." I closed my eyes, saw her as a little girl, 5 years old, learning to read at this same kitchen table. 10 years old, crying because some boy had been mean to her at school. 16, bringing home her first boyfriend. 22, introducing me to Greg with stars in her eyes. When had she changed? Or had I just been too blind to see who she really was all along? "Paula, did you ever love me? Or was I always just a source of money to you?" How can you ask me that? Because I need to know. I need to understand when I became an ATM instead of a mother. She was crying harder now. "I do love you. I love you so much. That's why this is killing me. I never wanted it to be like this." Greg said it would be simple. We'd get guardianship, manage your money responsibly, everything would be fine. You'd be taken care of, and we'd get help with our debts. Everyone would win. Except I'd lose my freedom. You'd lose nothing. You'd still have your house, your life, everything. We'd just handle the big financial decisions. And spend my money paying off your creditors. Silence. "That's what this was always about," I said. "Not protecting me. Saving yourselves." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. But Mom, please, if you foreclose on our house, we'll have nothing. We'll lose everything. Is that what you want? To see your daughter homeless?" I thought about my answer for a long time. "Yes," I said finally. "If that's what it takes for you to learn that actions have consequences, then yes." I hung up. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. 20 rows of wooden benches, fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, 60-something with gray hair pulled back and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Richard Chen sat beside me at the defendant's table. Across the aisle, Paula and Greg sat with their attorney, Jennifer Wade. Paula wouldn't look at me. She stared straight ahead, her hands folded in her lap. Greg kept checking his phone until the bailiff told him to put it away. Carol was in the gallery. I felt her eyes on the back of my head. "All rise." Judge Morrison entered. We stood, then sat. She reviewed the paperwork in front of her for what felt like an hour, but was probably 3 minutes. "This is a petition for emergency guardianship," she said finally. "Mrs. Wade, you may begin." Jennifer Wade stood. She was polished, professional. She outlined Paula's concerns: my age, my widow status, alleged memory problems. She presented Carol's statement, a falsified letter claiming to be from Dr. Patterson, my primary care physician. Richard objected. "Your Honor, Dr. Patterson has submitted an affidavit stating he never wrote that letter and never expressed concerns about Mrs. Harrison's cognitive function. Someone forged his signature." Judge Morrison looked at Jennifer Wade. "Is that true?" Wade fumbled with her papers. "Your Honor, my client was given this letter by a medical professional. She had no reason to believe it was fraudulent." "Which medical professional?" Wade hesitated. "I'll need to consult with my client." "Do that. In the meantime, let's hear from Mrs. Harrison's counsel." Richard stood. He presented Dr. Kim's neurological evaluation, my financial records for the past 3 years, the timeline I'd created showing Paula and Greg's pattern of inquiries about my finances, the articles about Greg's past cases involving elderly victims. "Your Honor, this isn't about protecting Mrs. Harrison. This is about accessing her assets to pay off the petitioner's substantial debts. Mrs. Harrison is fully competent, financially savvy, and has been managing a complex portfolio successfully for 3 years since her husband's death." Judge Morrison studied the documents. "Mrs. Wade, I'm seeing some concerning patterns here. Your client is facing foreclosure. Her business has multiple judgments against it. Mr. Michaels has a history of legal issues involving elderly individuals. Can you explain why the court should believe this petition is motivated by genuine concern rather than financial desperation? Wade stood again. Your Honor, my client's financial situation is irrelevant to whether her mother needs assistance managing her affairs. Adult children often step in when they notice concerning changes in a parent's behavior. That's what Paula Harrison Michaels is trying to do here. By forging a doctor's letter? My client did not forge anything. She was provided with that document. By whom? Silence. Judge Morrison set down her papers. I'd like to hear from the family members. Mrs. Harrison, would you like to testify? I stood. My legs felt weak, but my voice was steady. Richard had prepared me for this. The bailiff swore me in. I sat in the witness box, my hands folded in my lap the way Paula's had been. Richard approached. Mrs. Harrison, can you tell the court about your educational background and work history? I explained. High school diploma in 1972. Married Tom in 1975. Worked various jobs while he established his career. Night school for accounting at age 35. 10 years doing bookkeeping for small businesses. Managed our family finances for 4 decades. And since your husband's death, how have you managed the estate he left you? I walked through it. The portfolio's growth from $8 million to $4, $2 million. The rental properties I'd sold at optimal times. The tax strategies I'd implemented. The refinancing of my mortgage to access capital for higher yield investments. Does that sound like someone with dementia? Richard asked. Objection, Wade said. Calls for speculation. Sustained. Rephrase. Mrs. Harrison, has any medical professional ever diagnosed you with cognitive impairment? No. Has anyone ever expressed concern about your ability to manage your affairs? Only my daughter. Starting approximately 7 months ago, around the time I learned she was facing financial difficulties, Wade stood for cross-examination. She was gentle at first, asked about my daily routine, whether I lived alone, whether I had support systems. Then she pivoted. Mrs. Harrison, isn't it true that you recently purchased your daughter's mortgage for the purpose of foreclosing on her home? Richard started to object, but I held up my hand. Yes. The courtroom went silent. You purchased your own daughter's mortgage knowing she couldn't afford the payments? I purchased a distressed asset below market value. Standard investment practice. But you knew this would result in your daughter losing her home? I knew that if my daughter continued to miss payments, there would be consequences. The mortgage exists whether I own it or the bank owns it. The terms don't change. But you're her mother. Most mothers wouldn't foreclose on their own children. Most children wouldn't try to have their mothers declared incompetent in order to steal their life savings. Wade's expression tightened. Your Honor, this demonstrates exactly the kind of irrational, vindictive behavior we're concerned about. Mrs. Harrison is making financial decisions based on emotion rather than sound judgment. Richard stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Harrison purchased that mortgage before her daughter filed for guardianship. She was protecting her assets from someone she'd identified as a financial threat. That's not irrational. That's prudent. Judge Morrison held up her hand. I'll determine what's prudent. Mrs. Wade, do you have other witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. We call Carol Harrison. My sister walked to the witness box. She was wearing a blue dress I'd never seen before. Probably bought for this occasion. Wade asked her questions about my behavior. Carol described incidents that sounded damning if you didn't know the context. Said I'd forgotten her birthday. Said I'd seemed confused about dates. Said I'd made poor financial decisions. Can you give an example of a poor financial decision? Wade asked. She refinanced her house even though it was paid off. She took out $200,000 in debt when she had no need to borrow money. That seemed very strange to me. Richard stood for cross-examination. Ms. Harrison, you testified that your sister refinanced her mortgage unnecessarily. Are you familiar with investment leverage? I don't know what that means. Are you aware that your sister used the $200,000 from that refinance to purchase municipal bonds yielding 5% annually? No. Are you aware that the mortgage interest rate was 3%? Carol shifted in her seat. No. So she borrowed money at 3% and invested it at 5%, earning a 2% spread on $200,000. That's $4,000 per year in profit. Does that sound like a poor financial decision? I suppose not. Ms. Harrison, you also testified that Mrs. Harrison forgot your birthday. When is your birthday? November 12th. And did Mrs. Harrison send you a card last year? I don't remember. Richard pulled out a piece of paper. I have a receipt from Hallmark Cards dated November 8th last year. Mrs. Harrison purchased and mailed a birthday card to your address. Do you remember receiving it? Carol's face flushed. Maybe I did. I don't remember. So perhaps Mrs. Harrison didn't forget your birthday. Perhaps you forgot that she remembered. Objection, Wade said. Argumentative. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Chen. Ms. Harrison, did your sister inherit your parents' house 40 years ago? Carol's jaw tightened. Yes. And you believed that was unfair? I don't see what that has to do with anything. Please answer the question. Yes, I thought it was unfair. Have you held resentment toward your sister for 40 years because of that? That's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? Did your niece ask you to testify? She said she needed my help. Did she offer you anything in exchange for your testimony? Carol hesitated too long. Ms. Harrison? She said if the guardianship went through, she'd help me with some debts I have. Richard let that hang in the air. So you were offered financial compensation for testifying against your sister? It wasn't like that. What was it like? She said family should help family. Interesting perspective. No further questions. Judge Morrison called a recess. 15 minutes. Richard and I went to a small conference room down the hall. That went well, he said. Carol's testimony is now worthless. The forged doctor's letter is worthless. We have Dr. Kim's evaluation. We have your financial records. Unless Wade has something devastating in her back pocket, I think we're going to win this. Paula hasn't testified yet. She won't. Wade knows putting her on the stand would be a disaster. We'd ask about the bribe she offered Jake, about her debts, about Greg's history. She can't risk it. When we returned to the courtroom, Wade stood. Your Honor, we'd like to call Jake Harrison Michaels. My heart stopped. Jake was in the gallery. I'd seen him come in during Carol's testimony. He walked to the witness box, was sworn in, sat down. Wade approached him carefully. Mr. Michaels, you're the grandson of Linda Harrison and the son of Paula Harrison Michaels, correct? Yes. You love your grandmother? Very much. And you love your mother? Jake hesitated. Yes. Have you noticed any changes in your grandmother's behavior over the past year? Yes. My stomach dropped. Richard's hand found mine under the table. Can you describe these changes? Jake looked at me, then at his mother, then back at Wade. She's become more confident, more decisive. She stands up for herself now instead of letting people take advantage of her. Wade blinked. I'm sorry? You asked if I've noticed changes. Those are the changes I've noticed. Grandma has stopped being a pushover. Has she seemed forgetful? Confused? No. She remembers everything, including things other people wish she'd forget. What do you mean by that? I mean, she remembers that my mom took $100,000 from Grandpa before he died. She remembers that my mom tried to bribe me with $2,000 to lie about her mental state. She remembers every time my mom has asked for money over the years and never paid it back. Paula made a small sound. Greg put his hand on her arm. Wade tried to recover. Your Honor, this witness is clearly biased. This is your witness, Ms. Wade. You called him. Wade sat down. Richard stood. Jake, did your mother ask you to testify today? Yes. She said I needed to support the family, that I needed to help her protect Grandma from herself. What did you tell her? I told her the only person Grandma needs protection from is her. Thank you. No further questions. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Michaels, I have a question. Why do you think your mother filed for guardianship? Jake looked at Paula. She was crying silently, mascara running down her cheeks. Because she's desperate, he said. Because she and Greg owe money to everyone, and they thought Grandma's $4 million would solve all their problems. They thought because Grandma is old and widowed, she'd be easy to control. They were wrong. Judge Morrison was silent for a long moment. I've heard enough. I'm denying the petition for emergency guardianship. Mrs. Harrison has demonstrated clear competency. The petitioner has demonstrated clear financial motivation. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of potential elder abuse and document forgery." She banged her gavel. It was over. The foreclosure was finalized on a Tuesday morning. Exactly 30 days after the court hearing, Paula and Greg had 15 days to vacate the property. They didn't use all of them. I drove past the house once, 3 days after they'd moved out. The for sale sign was already up. My property, listed through my LLC, I'd priced it fairly. $340,000. Enough to clear the mortgage and give me a small profit. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to see the empty rooms where Paula had raised Jake, where Greg had planned his schemes, where they'd built their life on borrowed money and broken promises. I just needed to know it was done. The district attorney's office moved quickly. Greg was charged with attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person and conspiracy to commit fraud. Paula was charged as an accessory. Carol faced a misdemeanor for providing false testimony in a legal proceeding. Their arraignments were scheduled for mid-June. I wouldn't attend. Richard would represent my interests. I'd already given my statement to Detective Sullivan, provided all my documentation, turned over the video of Greg threatening me on my porch. My part was finished. Jake came by the week after the foreclosure. He looked tired, thinner than he should be. He sat at my kitchen table and I made him a sandwich he picked at but didn't really eat. "Mom and Greg separated," he said. "She moved in with Carol temporarily. Greg's staying in some extended stay motel near the highway. I poured him iced tea in Tom's blue mug. Said nothing. Mom asked me to talk to you. She wants to apologize. She wants a chance to explain. There's nothing to explain. She's my mom, Grandma. She's broken. She's lost everything. Her marriage, her house, her business. She's facing criminal charges. She's completely destroyed." I sat down across from him. "Good," Jake flinched. "Grandma, Jake, your mother didn't make a mistake. She didn't have a moment of poor judgment. She spent months planning to steal my life savings. She tried to have me declared incompetent. She forged documents. She tried to bribe you. She enlisted your aunt to lie under oath. Those weren't accidents. Those were choices. I know, but she's still my mom, and she's sorry, really sorry. Sorry she failed, not sorry she tried." He was quiet for a long time. Outside, I could hear a lawnmower running. Normal suburban sounds, life continuing. "She said she doesn't blame you for what happened," Jake said finally. "She said she deserves it. She said if you never speak to her again, she understands. Then we're in agreement. Forever? You're really going to cut her out of your life forever?" I looked at my grandson, 19 years old, still young enough to believe that family was sacred, that blood meant obligation, that forgiveness was always possible if someone said the right words. "Jake, I spent 43 years being Paula's mother. I taught her to read at that table. I stayed up with her when she was sick. I paid for her education, her wedding, her business. I gave her everything I had to give. And when she needed more, instead of asking me honestly, she tried to steal it. She tried to take away my freedom, my dignity, my ability to make my own choices." She was desperate. We all get desperate sometimes. It doesn't excuse what we do about it. Jake stood up, walked to the window, looked out at my garden where Tom's roses were still blooming. "What about me?" he asked quietly. "Am I allowed to still see you? Or is loving her and loving you mutually exclusive?" The question hurt more than I expected. "You're always welcome here," I said. "But Jake, I need you to understand something. I'm not going to pretend that what Paula did was forgivable. I'm not going to have family dinners where we all act like nothing happened. I'm not going to send birthday cards or Christmas presents. I'm not going to attend her wedding if she marries again or visit her in the hospital if she gets sick. She made her choice. Now I'm making mine." That's so cold. No, it's self-preservation. For 40 years, I put everyone else first. Tom, Paula, you. I made myself small so other people could be comfortable. I accepted crumbs and called it love. That's over now. Jake turned around. There were tears on his cheeks. "So that's it? You're just done being anyone's mother? Anyone's grandmother?" "I'll always be your grandmother, but I'm done being a victim." He left without finishing his sandwich. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after. The house was quiet. The afternoon light moved across the floor in familiar patterns. This house where I'd lived for 40 years. Where Tom and I had raised our daughter. Where we'd hosted birthday parties and holiday dinners and ordinary Tuesday evenings. I thought about selling it. Starting over somewhere new. But that would be running away. And I wasn't running anymore. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard Chen. Greg took a plea deal. 18 months. Paula took probation and restitution. Carol paid a fine. It's over. I texted back. Thank you for everything. You did this, Linda. I just filed the paperwork. I made dinner for one. Grilled chicken, salad, fresh bread from the bakery on Main Street. Ate it at the kitchen table while reading a book about investment strategies for retirees. Tom would have laughed at that. His quiet wife, nose deep in financial textbooks. After dinner, I went to my garden. The roses needed deadheading again. I worked until the sun started setting, cutting away the spent blooms, making room for new growth. My phone rang. Paula. I looked at her name on the screen for a long moment. Then I blocked the number. She tried calling from a different number 10 minutes later. I blocked that one too. Then a text from an unknown number. Mom, please just talk to me, I'm begging you. I've lost everything. Please don't make me lose you too. I blocked it without responding. The next morning, Carol appeared on my doorstep. I watched her through the peephole. She rang the bell 3 times, knocked, waited, finally slid a handwritten note under the door and left. I picked it up after her car was gone. Linda, I know you're angry. I know I hurt you, but we're sisters. We're all each other has left. Please don't let Paula's mistakes destroy our relationship too. I was wrong to help her. I was jealous and bitter and stupid. But I love you. I've always loved you. Please call me. Carol. I read it twice. Then I tore it into small pieces and dropped it in the recycling bin. In July, Jake stopped by again. He'd gotten a summer job doing construction work. His arms were tanned and muscular. He looked healthier. I'm not here to talk about Mom, he said when I let him in. I just wanted to see how you're doing. I'm fine. Really? Really? We sat on the back porch. I'd bought new furniture, a small table, 2 comfortable chairs. We drank lemonade and watched birds at the feeder I'd hung from the oak tree. Mom's working at a call center, Jake said after a while. Customer service for an insurance company. $8 an hour. She lives in a studio apartment in Riverside. Carol kicked her out after 2 weeks. Said she couldn't handle the drama. I didn't respond. Greg's already out on bail. His lawyer got him some kind of work release deal. He's doing night maintenance at an office building. Mom says he calls her sometimes, but she doesn't answer. Jake, I know, you don't want to hear it, but Grandma, she's my mother. I can't just pretend she doesn't exist. I'm not asking you to. You're asking me to choose. No, I'm telling you that I've made my choice. What you do with your relationship with her is up to you. He was quiet for a while. Then, I got accepted to transfer to Ohio State for fall semester. Better engineering program than where I was. That's wonderful. I'll be closer. An hour away instead of 3. I was thinking maybe I could come visit more often. Help you with yard work or whatever, if you want. I reached over and squeezed his hand. I'd like that very much. After he left, I went back to my garden. The roses Tom had planted 4 years ago were thriving. I'd added new varieties too. Yellow, white, deep red. The garden was bigger now, fuller, more colorful than it had ever been when Tom was alive. That evening, I sat in Tom's study. I'd finally changed some things. Replaced his old desk chair with one that fit me better, added a new lamp, hung my accounting certificates on the wall alongside his engineering diplomas. I pulled out his note one more time. Read it again. Don't let her take advantage of you the way she did me. You're stronger than she thinks. Stronger than I ever gave you credit for. I folded it carefully and put it in a new place. A frame on my desk where I could see it every day. A reminder of who I'd been and who I'd become. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The message was Paula. Her voice was small, broken. Mom, I know you blocked my numbers. I borrowed someone's phone. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I destroyed everything. But I need you to know that I loved you. I do love you. And I'm sorry I forgot how to show it without trying to take something from you. I hope someday you can forgive me, but if you can't, I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I deleted the message without saving it. 2 weeks later, Jake brought me photos from his new apartment near campus. Small but nice. He'd furnished it with secondhand finds and seemed proud of what he'd created. Mom wanted to help with furniture money, he said. I told her no. Good. She asked if you'd sent me money instead. I told her that wasn't any of her business. Also good. He smiled a little. You've created a monster. Now I'm suspicious of everyone's motives. Not a monster, just someone who doesn't accept crumbs. On my actual 70th birthday in August, I threw myself a party. Just me. I made Tom's favorite dinner, pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans from my garden. I ate it at the kitchen table with Tom's blue mug full of wine. After dinner, I went to the porch and watched the sunset over my roses. They were at their peak, full and fragrant and perfect. Paula had texted earlier from another borrowed phone. Happy birthday, Mom. I hope you have a wonderful day. You deserve every happiness. I'd blocked the number immediately. Carol had sent a card that arrived 3 days early. I'd thrown it away unopened. Jake had called that morning, sung happy birthday off key, promised to visit on the weekend. I was alone on my 70th birthday, and I was at peace. The house was mine. The money was mine. The garden was mine. The decisions were mine. No one was going to take that away from me ever again. 3 days later, I got a call from a realtor. Someone wanted to make an offer on Paula and Greg's old house. $355,000. Cash. Close in 2 weeks. I accepted. The profit would go into my investment account. Maybe I'd use it to travel. Tom and I had always talked about seeing Europe. We'd never gone. Too expensive, we'd said. Had to save for retirement, for Paula's future, for emergencies that never came. But I was 70 years old. I had $2 million. I had a grandson who respected me. I had a garden that bloomed bigger every year. I didn't have a daughter anymore. I didn't have a sister. I didn't have family dinners or holiday gatherings or anyone to call when I was sick, but I had my freedom, and some prices were worth paying. I poured out the last of the wine, washed Tom's blue mug, and set it in the dish rack to dry. Tomorrow I'd work in the garden, prune back the summer growth, prepare the roses for fall, plant bulbs that would bloom next spring in colors I'd chosen for myself.